The irony was not lost on me, standing there in my ceremonial robes while watching a Barefoot prisoner from 3 cycles ago march through our capital wearing the insignia of a Terran Federation general. My name is Krell-Tech, Senior Research Coordinator of the Hegemony Xenobiology Division, and I am about to tell you the most terrifying story you will ever hear. Not because of the blood that was spilled, though there was plenty, not because of the wars that followed, though they reshaped 3 star systems. No, this story is terrifying because it proves something we should have realized long before we decided to poke the sleeping predator with a stick. Humans do not forgive, they do not forget, and they certainly do not stay down when you think you have broken them. Her name was Captain Maya Torres, though we knew her only as Subject 47 when she first arrived in our research facility on Nexus Prime. She had been captured during a border skirmish, one of dozens of human prisoners taken for our ongoing study into Terran combat psychology. Standard protocol, really. We had been doing this for years. What made Torres different was not immediately apparent. She was 5 feet 6 inches of lean muscle and scars, with dark hair that hung just past her shoulders and eyes the color of storm clouds. Unremarkable by human standards, I suppose, but there was something in the way she carried herself, even in shackles, that should have warned us. The first red flag came during her initial interrogation. Commander Vorth-9, our head of prisoner processing, had barely begun his standard questioning when Torres interrupted him. "You know," she said, her voice carrying that peculiar human accent from the Sol System's outer colonies, "this whole setup screams amateur hour. Restraints are titanium alloy, decent tensile strength but brittle under repeated stress. Your guards are carrying energy weapons with a charge cycle of 0.7 seconds between shots. And that door." She nodded toward the exit. "Magnetic lock with a manual override hidden behind that panel you think I cannot see." Vorth-9's mandibles clicked nervously. "How could you possibly know all of that?" Torres smiled, and I swear by the twin moons that smile should have sent us all running, because I have been in facilities like this before. The difference is, the ones who ran those places were actually competent. That was when we should have realized we were not dealing with a typical soldier. Maya Torres had been captured deliberately. She wanted to be here. The next few weeks were a masterclass in human deception. Torres submitted to our tests with what appeared to be resigned cooperation: blood samples, psychological evaluations, combat simulations, even surgical procedures to examine her nervous system responses. She endured it all with the patience of someone playing a very long game. Dr. Hextra Prime, our lead xenobiologist, was particularly fascinated by Torres's pain tolerance. "Remarkable," she would mutter after each session. "The human nervous system should not be capable of such controlled responses. It is as if she is deliberately moderating her reactions." "Maybe because I am," Torres said during one session, startling Hextra Prime. "We had assumed the neural dampeners would prevent coherent speech. You want to know how humans handle pain? We do not just endure it, we weaponize it." That statement went into my report with a note about possible delusional thinking. Looking back, it was probably the most accurate thing any of our subjects had ever told us. The escape happened on day 23 of her captivity. I still have the security footage, though I wish I could burn it from my memory. Torres had been scheduled for another round of combat stress testing, the kind where we pit prisoners against our training drones to observe their tactical responses under pressure. The test chamber was a circular arena, 50 meters in diameter, with reinforced walls and an observation deck, where we could monitor safely. Torres entered wearing the standard prisoner uniform, bare feet silent on the metal flooring. The first wave of drones activated with their usual mechanical precision. What happened next defied every prediction our combat algorithms had made. Torres did not try to fight the drones. Instead, she studied them for exactly 14 seconds, then moved with a speed and efficiency that our sensors struggled to track. She grabbed the first drone by its sensor avary and used its own momentum to slam it into the wall. Before the second could adjust its targeting, she had stripped the first of its power core and was already moving toward the third. "Fascinating," Dr. Hextra Prime whispered. "She is not fighting them individually. She is treating them as a system to be dismantled. Within 3 minutes, Torres had reduced 12 combat drones to scrap metal and was standing in the center of the arena holding an improvised weapon constructed from their parts. That was when she looked directly at the observation deck and smiled again. "Now for the real test," she said, and threw her makeshift spear straight through the reinforced transfer steel window. The security breach alarms were still wailing when Torres disappeared into the facility's ventilation system. Bare feet, standard prison uniform, and somehow she had memorized the entire layout during her 23 days of captivity. Our security teams found traces of her passage throughout the complex, but always exactly one step behind her actual location. She made it to the communications array first. By the time our technicians reached the control room, Torres had already transmitted a burst signal toward Terran space. The message was encrypted with military-grade protocols none of us could break. But the implications were clear enough. The Terran Federation now knew exactly where their missing captain was being held. Torres made it to the hangar bay 12 minutes before our lockdown procedures could activate the blast doors. She had somehow acquired a guard's uniform, complete with identification codes, and walked past 3 security checkpoints without raising suspicion. The surveillance footage shows her boarding a maintenance shuttle with the casual confidence of someone who belonged there. Commander 49 led the pursuit personally, taking our fastest interceptor to track the stolen shuttle. He caught up with her just as she reached the edge of our system's gravity well, close enough to the hyperspace transition point that rescue from Terran forces was a real possibility. "Surrender now and your treatment will be no worse than before," he transmitted to her stolen ship. "Resist and we will be forced to destroy you." Torres's response crackled through the comm system with crystal clarity. "You know what your problem is, Orphan 9. You think capture means victory? But all you have done is give me a free tour of your capabilities, your procedures, and your weaknesses. When I come back, and I will come back, it will not be as your prisoner." Then she did something that still gives me nightmares. Instead of jumping to hyperspace like any rational being would have done, Torres turned her shuttle around and aimed it directly at Vorth 9's interceptor, at ramming speed. The collision destroyed both ships. Our sensor arrays detected the explosion, but no survivors. Case closed, or so we thought. The investigation that followed revealed the true scope of Torres's intelligence gathering. During her captivity, she had somehow mapped our entire facility, identified key personnel, recorded guard rotations, and even calculated the exact specifications of our defensive systems. How she accomplished this while supposedly unconscious during medical procedures remained a mystery that kept our security analysts awake for months. She was never really our prisoner, I concluded in my final report. We were hers. 6 months passed in relative quiet. The border skirmishes continued, but there was no unusual Terran activity in our sector. No rescue attempts, no retaliation for Torres's death. Some of our strategists began to wonder if her final transmission had even reached its intended recipients. Then the reports started coming in from our outer monitoring stations. Ships moving through hyperspace with energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. Fleet movements that made no tactical sense according to established Terran doctrine. And strangest of all, communication intercepts suggesting a massive reorganization within the Federation military hierarchy. They are promoting someone. Intelligence Officer Kill 7 informed the High Command during one of our weekly briefings. New command structure, new tactical protocols, new training regimens. Whoever is leading this transformation has unprecedented authority from the Federation Council. Admiral Krex Prime leaned forward in his command throne. "Do we have identification on this new leader?" Col 7's tentacles writhed with uncertainty. "The communications are heavily encrypted, but we have isolated one designation that appears frequently. Codename Hurricane. No additional identification available." I felt a chill run down my carapace, though I could not explain why at the time. Something about that codename triggered a memory I could not quite grasp. The first real indication that our troubles were just beginning came when Outpost Delta 7 went silent. The automated distress beacon activated for exactly 43 seconds before being manually shut down. When our response fleet arrived 6 hours later, they found the entire facility abandoned. Not destroyed, abandoned. Every piece of equipment had been carefully removed. Every data core had been wiped clean. Even the furniture was gone. The only thing left behind was a message spray-painted on the command center wall in perfect Hegemony script. "Thanks for the intel. See you soon." Admiral Krex Prime ordered a full investigation, but our forensics teams found nothing useful. Whoever had orchestrated the raid knew our procedures well enough to avoid leaving any evidence behind. The precision of the operation was unnervingly familiar. Then Outpost Gamma 4 disappeared. Then Research Station 9. Then the entire mining complex at Kepler 77. Each time, the same pattern. Surgical strikes, complete evacuation of assets, and that mocking signature left behind. "This is not random piracy," I told the Admiral during an emergency council session. "Someone is systematically mapping our defensive positions and resource allocation. They know exactly what to take and what to leave behind." "But who?" Krex Prime demanded. "Our intelligence suggests no major Terran offensive is being planned. Their fleet movements remain within normal parameters." That was when the pieces finally clicked together in my mind. The code name Hurricane. The surgical precision of the raids. The intimate knowledge of our procedures and weaknesses. Maya Torres was alive. "Admiral," I said, my voice barely steady, "I believe I know who is responsible for these attacks. But you are not going to like what I have to tell you." I explained about Subject 47, about her escape, about the intelligence she had gathered during her captivity. I showed them the security footage of her final transmission, her promise to return. Most importantly, I shared my growing conviction that her death had been staged. "You are suggesting," Admiral Krex Prime said slowly, "that a single human prisoner has somehow survived a ship collision, returned to Terran space, and is now conducting military operations against our forces?" "Not just conducting operations," I corrected, "leading them, training them, teaching them, everything she learned about us during her captivity." The Admiral's laugh was bitter. "Even if this human survived, which is highly unlikely, what could she possibly tell the Federation that they do not already know? We are talking about one escaped prisoner, not a strategic intelligence breakthrough." That was when the communication came in. Priority 1 transmission from Nexus Prime, the same facility where Torres had been held. The base commander's image appeared on our central display, his face pale with shock. "Admiral," he gasped, "we have a problem. A big one." "Report," Krex Prime snapped. "Terran fleet, sir. Massive formation. Approaching from hyperspace. They will be in weapons range in less than 20 minutes. Impossible. Our early warning systems would have detected any significant fleet movement days ago." The base commander's image flickered as weapons fire began lighting up the space around his station. "Sir, these ships are using some kind of stealth technology we have never seen before. And Admiral, they are being led by a human female wearing Federation General insignia. She is requesting to speak with Senior Research Coordinator Kraltek." Every eye in the command center turned toward me. I felt my organs constrict with terror as the implications sank in. Maya Torres had not just survived her escape. She had used her captivity to study us, to learn our weaknesses, to prepare for exactly this moment. And now she was back, not as a prisoner or even as a soldier, but as a general with an entire fleet at her command. "Put her through," I whispered. The display shifted, and there she was, Maya Torres, no longer in prisoner's garb but wearing the crisp uniform of a Terran Federation general. Her hair was shorter now, pulled back in a military style, and her storm-gray eyes held a coldness that made my blood freeze. But what truly terrified me was her feet. She was wearing standard military boots, of course, but somehow I could still see her as she had been during her escape. Barefoot, determined and absolutely unstoppable. "Hello, Kraltek," she said, her voice carrying the same casual tone she had used during her interrogations. "Miss me?" "How?" was all I could manage to say. Torres smiled, and this time there was nothing hidden behind it. Pure predatory satisfaction. "You really want to know? Simple. I did exactly what I told Commander Vorth 9 I would do. I went home, I shared everything I learned about your people, and I came back. The only difference is, this time I brought friends." "What do you want?" Admiral Krex Prime demanded. Just as Torres replied. For every prisoner you took, for every experiment you conducted, for every war crime you committed in the name of research. She paused, her eyes finding mine across the vast distance between our ships. But mostly I want you to understand something important about humans. Which is, we do not just fight wars, we end them. The transmission cut out, leaving us staring at a blank screen while the sounds of battle echoed from Nexus Prime. In the distance I could see the lights of Torres's fleet moving with mechanical precision, surrounding our positions with the kind of tactical efficiency that spoke of months, maybe years of preparation. This was not revenge. This was something far more terrifying. This was a human being who had turned her capture into a learning experience, her escape into a recruitment tool, and her return into the opening move of a war we were already losing. And as the first explosions began lighting up the space around our command ship, I realized the most frightening truth of all. Maya Torres had not come back to defeat us. She had come back to teach us what happens when you underestimate a human who has nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The war was just beginning. The first thing you need to understand about human warfare is that they do not fight the battle you expect. They fight the battle they choose on terms they dictate, using weapons you never saw coming. Admiral Crex Prime learned this lesson exactly 7 minutes after Maya Torres cut the transmission. All defensive batteries target the lead Terran vessel, the Admiral barked. Maximum firepower, concentrated barrage. Our gunners obeyed with typical Hegemony precision. Plasma cannons that could vaporize a moon locked onto Torres's flagship and unleashed enough energy to crack a planet's crust. The beams lanced through space with lethal accuracy, converging on their target in a display of firepower that should have ended the engagement before it truly began. The human ship simply was not there anymore. Sensor sweep, Crex Prime shouted. Where did it go? Sir, came the panicked response from our tracking station. It did not move. It folded. I felt my stomach drop into my lower abdomen. Folded? That was impossible. Space-time manipulation on that scale required technology centuries beyond what the Federation possessed. Torres' voice crackled through our communication system, casual as ever. Nice shooting. Your targeting computers have improved since my visit. Unfortunately, so have our defensive systems. Admiral Crex Prime's mandibles clicked furiously. Impossible. Our intelligence indicates no such technology in Terran possession. Your intelligence, Torres replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice, is about 6 months out of date. Amazing what you can accomplish when someone gives you detailed specifications of enemy weapon systems. Thanks for that, by the way. The revelation hit me like a plasma bolt to the brain case. During her captivity, Torres had not just studied our procedures and personnel, she had analyzed our weapons, our shields, our tactical doctrines. Every test we had run, every simulation we had forced her through, had been feeding information back to Terran military engineers. She was not gathering intelligence, I whispered to myself. She was conducting research and development. The human fleet materialized around us like predators emerging from tall grass. 67 ships, ranging from sleek destroyers to massive dreadnoughts, all bearing design modifications that made them look distinctly non-Terran. Angular hulls that seemed to bend light around them. Weapon arrays positioned in configurations that defied conventional tactical thinking, and moving with a coordination that suggested hive mind-level communication. Multiple contacts. Our sensor operator called out, "They are everywhere." How did they get so close without triggering proximity alarms? Torres answered that question by demonstrating exactly how the human ships did not just use stealth technology. They used our own sensor networks against us, broadcasting false readings that made our computers see empty space where deadly warships actually lurk. Every pulse from our detection arrays was being intercepted, analyzed, and fed back to us with carefully crafted deceptions. Lesson 1 in Human Warfare, Torres's voice echoed through our bridge. Know your enemy better than they know themselves. The first volley from the human fleet was unlike anything in our tactical databases. Instead of the expected energy weapons, they launched kinetic projectiles, millions of tiny slivers of metal that moved faster than our point defense systems could track, each one guided by microcomputers programmed with detailed knowledge of our ship designs. The projectiles did not try to punch through our armor. They found the weak points: sensor arrays, weapon mounts, shield generators, engine exhaust ports. Every vulnerable spot that Torres had undoubtedly memorized during her time studying our technology. Within 30 seconds, our defensive capabilities were reduced by 60%. "Return fire," Crex Prime roared. "All weapons, free targeting." Our remaining guns opened up with desperate fury, filling space with enough plasma to melt a small asteroid. But the human ships moved like living things, flowing around our fire with an organic grace that made a mockery of traditional space combat. They were not just avoiding our weapons, they were dancing around them. "Sir," our tactical officer called out, his voice cracking with stress, "their movement patterns do not match any known Terran combat doctrine." Because they are not using Terran doctrine, I realized aloud. They are using ours. It was true. The human fleet was employing hegemony tactical formations, but refined and perfected beyond our own capabilities. They knew exactly how we would respond to each maneuver because Torres had studied our combat simulations during her captivity. She had taken our own strategies and turned them into weapons against us. The second wave of human attacks targeted our command and control systems. Sophisticated cyber warfare packages that slipped through our firewalls like they had been designed by the same engineers who built them, which I realized with growing horror, they probably had. "How many of our people did you turn?" I transmitted directly to Torres's ship. Her response came back immediately. "Turn? Oh, Kreetsek, you still do not understand. I did not turn anyone. I inspired them." The explanation came in the form of intercepted communications from our own ships. Voices I recognized. Scientists from my own research division. Engineers who had worked on our most classified projects. Even security personnel who had guarded Torres during her captivity. They were helping the humans. "Dr. Hextra Prime to all hegemony vessels," came a familiar voice over our emergency channel. "This is not betrayal. This is justice. For 3 years we have conducted experiments on sentient beings. We have justified torture as research. We have committed crimes that violate every principle of civilized behavior." Admiral Crex Prime's face went pale. "Mutiny. They are committing mutiny." "No," Torres's voice cut in. "They are choosing sides. And they have chosen correctly." The third phase of the human attack was the most terrifying yet. Instead of trying to destroy our ships, they began boarding them. Transport craft that moved too fast for our guns to track, filled with human soldiers wearing armor that incorporated design elements from our own technology. But these were not ordinary soldiers. These were troops trained by Maya Torres herself, using combat techniques refined during her captivity in our facilities. They knew the layout of our ships because she had studied our construction specifications. They knew our security protocols because she had observed them firsthand. They knew our weaknesses because we had shown them to her. The boarding of the heavy cruiser Domination 7 took exactly 18 minutes. Our security recordings show human soldiers moving through the ship's corridors with the confidence of people who had practiced the assault countless times. They bypassed our strong points, avoided our defensive positions, and struck directly at critical systems with surgical precision. "Bridge secured," came the report from the human strike team leader. "Minimal casualties. Crew is being processed according to Protocol 7. Protocol 7. Even the humans were using our own administrative systems against us. The irony would have been amusing if it were not so terrifying." "Admiral," I said quietly, "we need to withdraw. Immediately." Crex Prime turned on me with fury. "Withdraw? From a human fleet? Never! We outnumber them 3-1. Numbers do not matter when the enemy knows everything about you and you know nothing about them," I replied. "Torres has turned this battle into a laboratory experiment, and we are the test subjects." As if to prove my point, the human fleet suddenly shifted formation. Instead of maintaining their assault pattern, they began herding our ships into a specific configuration. It took me several minutes to recognize what they were doing. They were arranging us according to our own tactical manual. Formation Delta 7, designed for maximum defensive firepower with minimal maneuvering capability. A formation that Torres had undoubtedly observed during her captivity. "They are setting us up," I whispered. This entire engagement has been choreographed. The truth hit me like a sledgehammer. To the brain case. The human fleet had not come here to fight a battle. They had come here to demonstrate their superiority. Every move we made, every tactic we employed, every desperate gambit we attempted, had been anticipated and countered before we even thought of it. Maya Torres was not just winning this engagement. She was teaching a lesson to the entire hegemony about the consequences of underestimating human intelligence and determination. Attention, hegemony forces. Torres' voice filled our bridge once again. You have 60 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare for boarding. Anyone who complies will be treated according to the same standards you showed our people. Anyone who resists will discover what human warfare really looks like when we stop being polite. Admiral Krex Prime's response was immediate and predictable. All ships, ramming speed. If we cannot defeat them with firepower, we will destroy them with our mass. It was exactly the wrong decision. The moment our ships began their suicidal charge, the human fleet demonstrated why Torres had maneuvered us into Formation Delta 7. Our ships were perfectly positioned for a tactic called the meat grinder. Something I had seen in archived footage from the Terran Centauri War. The humans did not try to avoid our ramming attack. Instead, they channeled it. Their ships formed corridors of intersecting fire that turned our charge into a gauntlet of destruction. Our vessels were forced to run through overlapping fields of kinetic projectiles, plasma beams, and something new that I had never seen before. What are those? I asked, pointing at the strange purple energy discharges coming from the human weapons. Unknown technology, our sensor operator replied. Energy signature suggests some kind of particle accelerator, but the power output is impossible. Torres answered the question herself. Gravity weapons, Kraltek. Turns out your research into human pain tolerance was very helpful. We learned to build devices that can compress matter at the molecular level. Very effective against ship hulls, as you are about to discover. The heavy battleship Eternal Might took a direct hit from one of these gravity weapons. I watched in horror as the ship's armor plating simply collapsed inward, as if being crushed by an invisible fist. The vessel folded in on itself like paper before exploding in a burst of superheated plasma. Impossible, Admiral Krex Prime gasped. That ship had 4 meters of ablative armor. Had being the operative term, Torres replied. Amazing what you can accomplish when you combine human ingenuity with detailed knowledge of hegemony metallurgy. We know exactly what alloys you use and exactly how to make them fail catastrophically. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted another 27 minutes. By the end, 43 of our ships had been destroyed, 18 had been captured, and the remainder were running for hyperspace with their weapon systems disabled. My own vessel, the Research Command ship Infinite Wisdom, was among those taken intact. The human boarding party that seized our bridge was led by a woman who looked disturbingly familiar. Dr. Lydia Reeves, she introduced herself, removing her helmet to reveal the face of someone I had seen in Torres's personnel files. Former Federation prisoner, current colonel in the Terran Liberation Corps. I believe you knew my commanding officer. Where is Torres? I asked. Colonel Reeves smiled. Preparing for Phase 2 of the operation. This little demonstration was just the opening act. Phase 2? Oh yes, Reeves said, her smile turning predatory. Did you really think General Torres would be satisfied with just defeating one fleet? She has much bigger plans. That was when the truth began to dawn on me. The attack on our fleet was not the main objective. It was a distraction. While we had been focused on the battle here at Nexus Prime, Torres had been implementing something far more ambitious. Where is she? I demanded. Reeves checked her chronometer. About now? I would say she is probably walking into the High Command Center on your capital world, wearing her dress uniform and carrying a very interesting briefcase. My organs froze solid. The capital world. The seat of hegemony power. The most heavily defended planet in our entire territory. How? I whispered. The same way she escaped from your research facility, Reeves replied. She walked through the front door, smiled at the guards, and let your own security protocols do the rest. The communication came through exactly as Reeves had predicted. Emergency transmission from the hegemony capital, marked with the highest priority codes. The image that appeared on our screen showed the interior of the High Command chamber with Maya Torres standing calmly at the center of the room. She was indeed wearing her dress uniform, complete with general's insignia and a collection of medals I did not recognize. In her hands was a sleek metal briefcase that seemed to hum with barely contained energy. Around her, the entire Hegemony High Command sat frozen in their seats, their faces masks of shock and terror. "Greetings, Creel Tech," Torres said, looking directly into the camera. "I told you I would come back. I just did not mention that I would be making a house call to your government as well. How did you get past planetary defenses?" came Admiral Crick's Prime's strangled voice from our captured bridge. Torres held up a small device I recognized from our own security systems. "Diplomatic immunity codes. Amazing what you can find in the personnel files of a research facility. Turns out your xenobiology division has some very interesting connections to your intelligence services." The implications crashed over me like a tidal wave. Torres had not just studied our military capabilities during her captivity. She had mapped our entire governmental structure, identified key personnel, and somehow acquired the access codes needed to walk into the most secure facility in Hegemony space. "What do you want?" asked High Chancellor Mordag Supreme, his voice barely audible. Torres opened her briefcase, revealing what appeared to be a standard Federation datapad. But the way she handled it suggested it contained something far more significant than routine diplomatic correspondence. "I want to read you something," she said conversationally. "A list of names, 3,742 of them, to be exact. Every human prisoner taken by Hegemony forces over the past 5 years. Every man, woman, and child who disappeared into your research facilities." She paused, letting the silence stretch until it became unbearable. "Now I am going to read you another list. The current locations of every one of those prisoners, the conditions they are being held in, the experiments being conducted on them, and the projected survival rates based on your own medical reports." High Chancellor Mordag Supreme's skin began changing color, cycling through several shades of fear-induced pigmentation. "How could you possibly have access to classified research data?" Torres smiled, and for the first time since her return it was not predatory. It was satisfied. Completely, utterly satisfied. "Because, Your Excellency, you have a leak in your organization. A very big leak. In fact, you have so many leaks that your entire intelligence apparatus is essentially working for me now." She gestured to someone off camera, and another figure stepped into view. I recognized him immediately, and my hearts nearly stopped. Director Kith Alpha, head of Hegemony Intelligence, the most trusted advisor to the High Chancellor, standing beside Maya Torres, like they were old friends. "Hello, Chancellor," Kith Alpha said calmly. "I resign." The room erupted in chaos. High Command members shouting accusations, security alarms blaring, the sounds of panic echoing through the most secure building in our civilization. Through it all, Maya Torres stood perfectly still, waiting for the noise to die down. When silence finally returned, she spoke in a voice that carried absolute authority. "Gentlemen, ladies, distinguished members of the Hegemony High Command, you have a choice to make. You can continue this war, in which case every secret facility, every hidden research station, every classified project you have ever authorized will be exposed to the galaxy at large. Your own people will see exactly what you have been doing in their name." She paused, letting that threat sink in. "Or you can accept my terms for immediate cessation of hostilities and the return of all human prisoners. Your choice, but I need an answer in the next 60 seconds. High Chancellor Mordag Supreme looked around the room at his fellow leaders. I could see the calculation in his eyes, weighing the political cost of surrender against the devastating consequences of continued resistance. "What are your terms?" he asked finally. Torres closed her briefcase with a definitive click. "Complete and immediate release of all human prisoners. Reparations for their treatment. Full disclosure of all research conducted on human subjects. And formal recognition of human territorial claims in the disputed border regions. And if we refuse, then the war continues. And I promise you, Chancellor, the demonstration you witnessed today was me being merciful. You do not want to see what human warfare looks like when we stop pulling our punches." The silence that followed stretched for exactly 57 seconds. I counted every one of them, watching as the most powerful leaders in Hegemony space grappled with the impossible reality of their situation. A single human prisoner had escaped their custody, returned with knowledge of their deepest secrets, and was now dictating terms to their entire civilization. High Chancellor Mordek Supreme finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "We accept your terms." Torres nodded as if she had expected nothing else. "Excellent. You have 72 hours to begin implementation. My people will be monitoring your compliance very carefully." She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "Oh, and Chancellor, just so we are perfectly clear about something, this is not a negotiation. This is not a diplomatic agreement. This is a surrender. Your surrender. To a human being who you tried to break and failed." She looked directly into the camera one final time. "Remember that the next time you think about underestimating my species." The transmission ended, leaving our bridge in stunned silence. Around me, the human soldiers who had captured our ship were already beginning to process prisoners and secure critical systems. They moved with the efficient professionalism of people who had done this many times before. "Colonel Reeves," I called out as she supervised the operation. "Yes. How long has Torres been planning this?" Reeves considered the question carefully. "From the moment she was captured, maybe before. General Turvis has a saying, every setback is intelligence gathering for the comeback. I think she views her entire captivity as the most successful reconnaissance mission in military history." I thought about that as I watched human technicians download our computer systems and catalog our research data. Maya Torres had spent 23 days as our prisoner, enduring tests and procedures that would have broken most beings. But instead of being broken, she had been taking notes, planning, learning, preparing for exactly this moment. "What happens now?" I asked. Reeves looked at me with something that might have been pity. "Now you learn what it feels like to be on the receiving end of human justice. I suggest you pray that we are more merciful than you were." As our ship was escorted toward human space, I realized that the war was not over. In fact, it was just beginning. But it would not be the war any of us had expected. It would be Maya Torres's war, fought on her terms, according to her rules. And we had already lost. 6 months after the Hegemony's surrender, I stood in the observation deck of Prison Station Omega-7, watching human engineers dismantle our most classified research facility with the methodical precision of surgeons removing a tumor. The irony was not lost on me. The same station where we had once held Maya Torres as Subject 47 was now being converted into a memorial for the victims of our experiments, and I was the prisoner, watching it happen through reinforced transparestial while wearing the orange jumpsuit of a war criminal. "Magnificent, is it not?" came a familiar voice behind me. I turned to see General Maya Torres standing in the doorway, her dress uniform immaculate, her storm-gray eyes reflecting the sparks from the demolition work outside. She looked exactly as she had during our final confrontation, except for one detail that chilled my blood. She was smiling, not the predatory grin I had come to fear, but something far more terrifying. The satisfied expression of someone whose life's work was finally complete. "Torres," I said, my voice hoarse from months of interrogation sessions, "come to gloat over your victory?" She stepped into the observation lounge and took the seat across from me, moving with the same casual confidence she had displayed even as our prisoner. "Gloat? Oh, Kraltek, you still do not understand. This was never about victory. This was about evolution." "Evolution?" Torres gestured toward the dismantling operation outside. "Tell me, what do you see when you look at those human work crews?" I studied the figures in environmental suits, cutting through bulkheads and extracting equipment with practiced efficiency. Engineers, demolition specialists. Nothing unusual. "Look closer," Torres said. "Notice anything about their techniques? Their equipment? Their coordination?" I did look closer, and what I saw made my stomach clench with recognition. The work crews were not using standard human technology. Their cutting tools incorporated hegemony plasma arrays. Their environmental suits showed design elements from 3 different alien species. Even their communication protocols followed patterns I had seen in our own military operations. "You are using our technology," I whispered. "Improving it, Torres corrected. Every piece of equipment, every tactical doctrine, every scientific principle we encountered during my captivity has been studied, refined, and integrated into human civilization. Do you have any idea what you people accomplished when you decided to give me a guided tour of your capabilities? The full scope of what she was saying began to dawn on me. Torres had not just gathered intelligence during her captivity. She had conducted a comprehensive technology transfer operation that had advanced human civilization by decades, maybe centuries. Impossible, I said. Even with the information you gathered, reverse engineering alien technology would take years of research. Torres laughed, and the sound sent ice through my circulatory system. Who said anything about reverse engineering? Corlal, Tech. You wonderful, naive fool. You gave me something far more valuable than technical specifications. You gave me allies. Allies? Dr. Hestra Prime sends her regards, by the way. She is currently heading the Terran Federation's new Xenobiology Research Division. Turns out she always had ethical concerns about your experimental methods. My escape gave her the perfect opportunity to express those concerns in a more productive environment. The revelation hit me like a plasma bolt to the brain case. Hextra Prime, our lead xenobiologist, was working for the humans. Had been working for them since Torres's escape, providing not just technical knowledge but active assistance in developing countermeasures to hegemony weapons and defenses. How many? I asked. How many what? How many of our people are working for you? Torres consulted a datapad with casual indifference. As of last count, approximately 37% of your scientific community, 42% of your military intelligence apparatus, and 68% of your industrial engineering corps. Would you like the exact numbers? I felt my organs shut down in sequence as the implications sank in. Torres had not just defeated the hegemony, she had absorbed it, piece by piece, person by person. She had systematically recruited our brightest minds and most capable leaders, turning our own expertise against us. But why would they betray their own species? Torres leaned forward, her expression becoming serious for the first time since entering the room. Because I offered them something you never did. Purpose. Direction. The chance to use their knowledge for creation instead of destruction. She activated a wall display that showed footage from various human colonies throughout the galaxy. Cities rising from barren worlds, space stations that dwarfed anything in hegemony space, ships that moved between stars with impossible speed and grace. Look at what we have built in 6 months, Krelltech. Fusion power plants based on hegemony reactor designs. Terraforming systems that incorporate Zentheri atmospheric processors. Medical facilities using Corvan regeneration technology. We have not just stolen your knowledge, we have made it better. The images on the screen showed the truth of her words. Human space had been transformed into something that surpassed even our most advanced installations. Technology that should have taken generations to develop had been implemented and improved upon in a matter of months. This is what happens, Torres continued, when you take the knowledge of a dozen species and give it to human ingenuity. We do not just copy existing designs, we reimagine them, we perfect them, we make them into something greater than their creators ever dreamed possible. But the technological advancement was only part of the story. The other displays showed something that terrified me even more. Human military forces, no longer confined to their traditional role as defensive units, had begun expanding throughout the galaxy with unstoppable momentum. The Corvan Republic surrendered last week, Torres mentioned casually. The Zenthari Collective is expected to formally request Federation membership within the month. Even the Thrakari Empire has opened diplomatic channels. You are conquering the galaxy, I said. Conquering? Torres shook her head. We are not conquerors, Krelltech. We are liberators. Every species we encounter has the same choice your people did. Join us willingly and prosper, or resist and face the consequences. And if they resist, Torres smiled again, and this time there was nothing hidden behind it. Pure, predatory satisfaction. Then they get to experience what the Vakari Federation learned 3 weeks ago. The wall display shifted to show footage from the Vakari system, or what remained of it, where once there had been a thriving civilization with dozens of worlds and billions of inhabitants. Now there was only empty space and debris fields. What did you do? I whispered. We gave them a demonstration of human warfare when we stopped being polite, Torres replied. The Vakari made the mistake of thinking they could capture human civilians for their own research projects. They learned otherwise. The footage showed the systematic destruction of an entire interstellar civilization, not through orbital bombardment or conventional warfare, but through something far more sophisticated and terrifying. Human ships had simply appeared throughout Vakari space and begun systematically dismantling their infrastructure. How, I asked. Gravity weapons. Dimensional displacement technology, and something we developed based on your own pain research. Torres explained. Turns out the neural pathways you studied so extensively can be disrupted remotely, very effective against organic nervous systems. The implications were staggering. The humans had weaponized our own research into biological torture, turning it into a tool for pacifying entire populations without causing permanent physical damage. They could literally switch off a being's ability to feel pain, or conversely amplify it beyond endurance. The Vakari surrendered in 47 hours. Torres continued. Their entire population is currently undergoing rehabilitation at Federation medical facilities. Those who committed crimes against human civilians are being processed through our justice system. The rest will be relocated to suitable worlds and given the opportunity to integrate into Federation society. And their military? What military? Torres asked with genuine confusion. We eliminated their capacity for organized warfare within the first 6 hours of the engagement. Their ships, their weapons, their command structure, all of it simply ceased to exist. The casual way she described the annihilation of an entire civilization's military power sent chills through my exoskeleton. This was not warfare as any species understood it. This was something entirely new, a form of conflict that made traditional concepts of victory and defeat obsolete. You see, Kraltek, Torres said, standing and walking to the viewport. My captivity taught me something important about the nature of power. It is not about who has the biggest guns or the strongest shields. It is about who understands the game being played. She gestured toward the wreckage of our research station. You people thought you were playing a simple game. Capture enemies, extract information, maintain technological superiority. But you were actually participating in something much more complex, which is evolution. The advancement of civilization through the integration of knowledge and the elimination of inefficient systems. Torres turned back to me, her expression thoughtful. Every species we have encountered so far has been stagnant, locked into rigid hierarchies, limited by traditional thinking, constrained by the fear of change. And humans are different? Humans, Torres said with obvious pride, our adaptation made manifest. We do not just learn from our mistakes, we learn from everyone else's mistakes. We do not just improve our own technology, we improve everyone's technology. We do not just win wars, we end the need for wars. The wall display showed new footage that took my breath away. Human colonies throughout the galaxy, but not just human populations. Every species I recognized was represented, working together in ways that should have been impossible. Corvan engineers collaborating with Zenthari biologists, Thrakari artists creating works alongside human poets, even former Hegemony citizens, including faces I recognized from our own research divisions. This is the future, Kroltek. Not human dominance, but human integration. We are not replacing other civilizations. We are synthesizing them into something greater than the sum of their parts. And those who refuse to join? Torres's expression hardened slightly. Become extinct, not through genocide but through irrelevance. Species that cannot adapt to the new paradigm simply fade away as their best and brightest abandon them for the Federation. I thought about the Hegemony's current situation. Our government had surrendered. Our military was disbanded. Our technology had been surpassed and our most talented citizens were defecting to human space in unprecedented numbers. We were not being destroyed. We were being absorbed one person at a time until nothing of our original civilization remained. How long have you been planning this? I asked. Torres checked her chronometer. Since I was 8 years old and read about the first contact protocols in my history classes, the moment I learned that there were other species in the galaxy, I began wondering what would happen if humans ever had to fight them. 8 years old? Human children are taught to think strategically from a very early age, Torres explained. By the time I joined the military, I already had detailed theoretical frameworks for conducting warfare against every known alien species. My captivity simply provided the practical data needed to test those theories. The casual way she described a lifetime of preparation for interstellar warfare made my blood freeze. Torres had not stumbled into becoming the architect of human expansion. She had been preparing for it her entire life, waiting for the opportunity to put her plans into action. The beauty of it, she continued, is that every species we encounter makes us stronger. Their knowledge, their technology, their unique perspectives, all of it becomes part of human civilization. We are not just conquering the galaxy, we are becoming the galaxy. And when there are no more species to absorb? Torres smiled, and for the first time since her return, it was genuinely warm. Then we look beyond this galaxy. The universe is vast, Grail Tech, full of wonders we have not yet imagined, and challenges we have not yet overcome. Humanity's expansion has only just begun. A chime sounded through the observation lounge, indicating an incoming priority transmission. Torres activated the communication system, and the image of a human military officer appeared on the wall display. "General," the officer reported, "the Andromedans have responded to our diplomatic overture. They are requesting a formal meeting to discuss terms for peaceful integration." Torres nodded approvingly. "Excellent. Schedule the negotiations for next week, and make sure our xenobiology teams are prepared. I want complete assessments of Andromedan physiology and psychology before we begin discussions." "Understood, General. There is one more thing. The Council of Elders has voted to offer you the position of Supreme Admiral of the Galactic Fleet. They are requesting your response." Torres considered this for a moment. "Tell the Council I am honored by their confidence, but I must decline. My work is not yet finished." "What are your orders, General?" "Prepare for Phase 3, Torres said simply. The transmission ended, leaving us alone in the observation lounge. I stared at Torres with growing horror as the implications of what I had just heard sank in. "Phase 3? I asked. "The final phase," Torres replied. "The transformation of human civilization from a single species entity into something truly cosmic in scope. When Phase 3 is complete, the distinction between humans and other species will become meaningless. We will all simply be citizens of the Federation. And my people," Torres looked at me with something that might have been sympathy. "Your people will have the same choice everyone else has. Adapt and thrive, or cling to the past and fade away. But I suspect most of them will choose adaptation. Hegemony citizens have always been intelligent enough to recognize a superior alternative when they see one." She moved toward the door, then paused to look back at me one final time. "You know, Kreltek, there is still a place for you in the New Order. Your research skills are impressive, and your knowledge of hegemony psychology would be valuable in helping your people transition to Federation citizenship. The offer stands if you are interested, and if I refuse, then you will spend the rest of your life in this comfortable cell, watching through that window as the galaxy transforms around you, a relic of a time when species fought each other instead of working together." Torres stepped through the doorway, then turned back with one final comment. "By the way, the prisoner uniforms are being redesigned next month. Dr. Extra Prime suggested that orange was too harsh for long-term psychological comfort. The new ones will be blue, much more soothing." With that, she was gone, leaving me alone with the view of our dismantled research station, and the growing certainty that Maya Torres had done something far more significant than win a war. She had ended an entire era of galactic history and begun something completely new. As I watched human workers finish their demolition and begin constructing something that looked like a monument, I realized that Torres had been right about one thing. This had never been about victory. It had been about evolution, and humanity had just evolved into something that would reshape the very nature of civilization itself. The Barefoot prisoner who had walked out of our research facility 6 months ago had returned as the architect of a new cosmic order. And the most terrifying part was not what she had accomplished, but what she planned to do next. Because if Torres was preparing for Phase 3 and Phases 1 and 2 had already transformed the galaxy beyond recognition, Then the universe itself was about to discover what happened when human ambition was given unlimited scope for expansion. The war was over. The transformation had only just begun. And somewhere in the growing network of human space, Maya Torres was already planning humanity's next great leap forward into a future that would make the conquest of this galaxy seem like a minor preliminary exercise. The woman who had escaped barefoot from our laboratory had returned wearing a general's rank, but I suspected that before she was finished she would be wearing something far more significant: the title of the being who had unified the cosmos under a single human-led banner. And there was absolutely nothing any of us could do to stop her.